afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today to discuss the BPF Futures 2024 mentoring program. Um, Next, my name is Garrick Pepper. I'm the BPF Futures board member for mentoring, where I'm also supported by my colleague Betsy Brady, who unfortunately can't make it today. Outside of the BPF, I'm a manager in the real estate M&A team at PwC. And I guess I'm quite passionate about mentoring. I've really benefited from some really good mentors throughout my career, and yeah, I guess it's just really important to start on that mentoring journey as soon as possible. I've been the last two BPF mentoring programs as a mentee, and yeah, I can say I've really enjoyed it. I guess the purpose of this webinar today is just to give a brief overview of the BPF Futures as an organization, as well as obviously the purpose and a summary of the BPF mentoring program. We'll also be hearing some feedback from previous mentee, Rebecca Jones, who I'll introduce a little bit later in the webinar. We were originally going to have another mentor on the call, Chris, but I think he's having a bit of technical difficulties today. But we'll also cover us on the timeline. So when you have to put your application in by, when we'll let you know the outcome of the matching process, as well as some Q&A at the end. Maybe just as we get started, this webinar is supposed to be not just Rebecca and I speaking, it's supposed to be interactive. So if everyone can put their name, their profession, and whether they're a mentor or mentee in the chat, that would be great, just in the background while we're going through. And if you want to put your LinkedIn in there or share any other details, that'd be really good. Awesome. So I guess kicking off with what is the BPF Futures? So we are part of the British Property Federation, which is the peak organisation for the real estate industry all across the UK. And I guess that includes Scotland. There is the SPF as well. We are a community of the BPF Futures of around 2,360 professionals. So yeah, we're quite large, located all across the UK, holding events, all across, but we'll touch on that a bit later as well. In terms of who can join, so anyone can join regardless of age, and there's no age limit, but just as long as you've got less than 10 years experience in the industry. So, if you've come across from a different industry and you've got under 10 years, then you're more than happy to have you on board. You don't need to be a corporate member of the BPF itself. So if your organization isn't a corporate member, we're still happy to have you on board the BPF Futures. And we are sector agnostic. So as long as what you do has something to do with property or real estate, whether you're public sector, private sector, investments, agency, it doesn't matter. We're still more than happy to have you on board and yeah, get you involved in some of the things we've been doing. In terms of other things we have been doing, so we are, as you said, located across all of the UK, but we are a little bit London-centric at the moment, with 1.5K out of our total membership, but we are expanding in the regions and expanding into Scotland as well. So you'll start to see more events popping up in those kind of places. We did hold 30 events last year. So as I said, very busy, always looking for new events to hold it and new partners to hold it with. In terms of how we're structured, so we're structured into 4 pillars, and that's influencing, learning, mentoring, and networking. As I said, I sit in the mentoring bucket, but my previous role was in the learning bucket. So, we work across the different pillars within the BPF committee, and we're always happy to hear different ideas, and any ideas that we might hear from our membership, we're more than happy to act on. Just in terms of our structure itself, we do split ourselves into the 4 pillars I mentioned earlier, as well as the regions and public sector. So we have 2 board representatives that cover those 2 sectors as well. Now, I guess in terms of the mentoring program itself, it has been running for the last 3 years, and it is aimed at introducing young professionals with senior industry leaders. And importantly, while junior members do benefit from the personal development aspect of the mentoring program, senior industry leaders also get to learn from their junior colleagues and employees. And this fits with the broader focus of ensuring a diverse range of skills ending up in senior positions as we progress within our career. I'll stop there, and thank you for listening to me so far. Apologies about the technical issues, but I will hand over now to Rebecca just to talk about her experiences as a mentee. Rebecca is a senior manager at BDO, but I'll let her introduce herself in further detail. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thanks, Gary. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining today and coming to listen to a bit about the mentor program. I'll talk a little bit about my experience with the scheme. So I joined it for the first time last year, but I think if we take it back probably 12 months, probably roughly about this time last year, I found myself in a new job. So I joined BDO last February, having previously spent about 12 years working within the general practice, but advising businesses across a range of industries from a financial perspective. And for those of you that don't know, that's the cool way of saying an accountant, basically. But I decided I wanted to kind of specialize in real estate. So I moved over to BDO, where I sit within their real estate specialist team. And I kind of thought to myself, when I heard about the mentor scheme, A, am I too old? No, was the answer. B, am I too experienced in terms of the stage of my career? No, was the answer. And C, why would I want to join the scheme? What is it that I want to get out of it? And I think like top tip number one, I guess, would be for you guys to really understand and carve out a bit of time where you think, why do you want to join this program? For some people that are listening, I'm sure there are promotions that you want to achieve or life events that you might want to navigate, or do you want to understand how to deal with some of the frustrations that arise from being a woman in the workplace, for example? For me, there were not really any of these things because I was quite new to the industry, quite experienced in what I was doing, and I really just wanted to understand what I wanted to achieve. So it was more about being able to speak with industry leaders or being connected with industry leaders to understand how they really learned about the industry, how they kept up to date with their industry knowledge, how they built out a network, how they maintained those relationships, what are the key events and things like that to attend. So it was nothing really groundbreaking. I didn't particularly want to go and set the world on fire at that stage. And I think just being able to sit down and think, why do I want to join this program? What can I get out of it? Is really fundamental in being able to set the tone and making sure that you have focus throughout the program should you then choose to apply. So let's roll it forward to a few months. Let's take it through to maybe August, September time, and I was paired up with Melanie Leach. And for those of you that don't know, that is the CEO of the BPF. So fantastic that I was able to have that exposure to somebody that is so prominent within our industry. And we booked in our first session. Melanie reached out to me. I think, I could have reached out. She could have reached out. You really did play it by ear. And I went over to Piccadilly Circus to their offices to go meet Melanie. And I would be lying if I said to you I wasn't a little bit apprehensive and a little bit nervous and potentially had a little bit of imposter syndrome, because this was me that didn't really know much about the industry, going to talk to somebody who was quite a senior figure within that space. So there were a few things that I tried to remind myself of, and I would just like to remind you guys of them too. The mentors on this program really want to help people. They wouldn't be here if they didn't want to set that time aside to try and help and develop junior people or other people within the profession. So that's key thing number one. They're also objective. And what I mean by that is there was absolutely no benefit to Melanie to tell me what I wanted to hear. She was very honest, she was very challenging, but ultimately she was objective with her perspectives. And that really allowed us to foster an environment and a relationship based on trust. And in that first meeting, we just set out to build rapport, to get to know each other, potentially spoke briefly about what it is I wanted to achieve, but may not have even touched upon that at the first instance. It really was just about understanding how each other communicated, how each other learn, what sort of frequency we want these sort of meetings to work, how important it is going to be for me, and everything like that. It just was about carving out some time to spend together. And as the relationship progressed, we met more frequently. I think we met maybe on a monthly basis, on a 6 weekly basis. And if we just go back to what I said at the start, there was nothing hugely tangible that I was trying to achieve by having this relationship. And actually, what I had set out to achieve in terms of understanding how to learn the skill sets, what events to do, we answered that in about 20 minutes. It wasn't a hugely challenging question. But what this relationship allowed us to do, and quite often I actually turned up and said, I don't really have much to say, which if you know me would know that's a huge understatement. But actually we could have an open communication channel and an open conversation where again I was being challenged, where again Melanie was offering her objective perspective, and from that there would always come 1, 2, 3 actions, some may be small, some may be bigger, that I said I was going to go away and implement within my day-to-day working career. And I think top tip number 2, let's say, is to just, if you say you're going to do something, commit to doing it. And what I mean by that is there was often times where I would have this meeting and it's very empowering and we'd come up with some ideas and conversations, and then I'd go to work the next day or in a couple of days, I'd read back through my notes about what I said I was going to do. And I'd think, whoa, okay, you were feeling very bold then, Rebecca, and very brave then when you said you were going to go and do that. But actually step out of your comfort zone and commit to doing that. And you may not necessarily do it in full, but at least try and challenge yourself and implement something that you said you were going to do, because that really gives this a purpose and underlines the whole premise of the scheme. So that's essentially how it kind of went for 6-7 months. I'm actually seeing Melanie on Thursday, which should be our last session, and I have no doubt that it won't be our last session. I'm not sure she's aware of that yet, but I'll broach that subject with her on Thursday. But it really doesn't have to be dramatic, and it really doesn't have to be grand gestures. It can be little things that you implement each day, but really commit to yourself if you say you're going to do it, to then do it. And I think if we now come to where we are now, so 11th of June 2024, and somebody said, can you come and speak on this panel and just talk a little bit about your experience with the scheme? And if I look back to what I said I wanted to do, I wanted to go and learn about the industry. And I definitely know about the industry. We now have a national learning programme that I set up at BDO that brings in junior members of staff that are new to the sector, and how we can all collaborate and how we can all strengthen our knowledge. So that's a big success. I wanted to widen my network. I'm currently sat here talking to you guys about my experience. 15 months ago, somebody said to me, will you do a webinar for the BPF? I didn't really know what BPF meant. There's so many acronyms in this space. I wouldn't have actually known what it was. So whilst there might not have been a promotion or it might not have been a significant life event, actually there are huge successes that have came from having that confident, safe space and that trusted relationship that I was able to build out with Melanie. And I think that would probably be my final tip of the scheme, is to just appreciate your successes. That 100% will come if you commit to putting into place some of those actions that you did. You might not see them, they might not be huge tangible results, but actually, even if it's stuff like carving out 30 minutes, 45 minutes to think what you want to achieve in the next 12 months, that's a huge success. Understanding your why, that's a huge success. Being able to build a relationship with a prominent industry figure, huge success. So it hasn't got to be something tangible that you want to achieve. I think even things like that are really, really brilliant skills for you to put into place to take your career forward. So I think my final thing would be always reflect on what you've done, and just champion your successes. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience for me. I would 100% do it again, and I would 100% like to be in Chris's position as a mentor at some point in the future when I can, to keep developing it. So that's everything from me. Thank you, Garrick.
Awesome. That was really, really good to hear, Rebecca, and good to see that Chris has been able to join us as well. So maybe I'll pass over to you, Chris, just to give a bit of an overview from a mentor's position.
So top tip as a mentor is check that you've got the right link before you start a Zoom call. I was desperately on there as a non-panelist, trying to say into the chat, I'm here, please let me in. The mentor experience is a varied one. It's very much driven by the mentee, and I think that's the difference between coaching and mentoring. Coaching is a sort of more of an education point. Mentoring is around can I bounce this off you? So, oh, look at that. Blimey, when was that photo taken? This is what 10 years of mentoring does to you, makes you old. So yeah, so I'm a partner in the real estate team at Travers and Hamlins, and I lead large scale sort of development projects. And so it was fascinating for me to talk to mentees from different parts of the property industry. I think that's why I was particularly keen to do the Property Federation version of mentoring. I do this, you know, for universities, for even some of the school kind of outreach programs. But the BPF and SPF version is really interesting and important, because I think one of the roles of the BPF as I work with is about the industry connecting people. And I think, as somebody who's kind of a bit long in the tooth and sort of relatively senior in the industry, it's important for me to try and share some of that experience, but also try to connect into people who are at the earlier stage of their career, to reflect back to them things that I've done or how I might approach it. But frankly, also to look at it the other way, is almost like a reverse mentoring piece. It's really fascinating to me to hear the stories of people who are at the start of their careers, because it helps me understand, you know, my own team and different stresses and strains, because they are different from when I was going through the earlier stages of my career. But ultimately, there is a enthusiasm which we all have for the property sector, and I think being able to sort of share some of that experience is helpful. I think the other thing I suggested from my mentoring experience is, so many of the issues that people face are quickly resolvable. There's a lot of issues, particularly for more junior colleagues, around confidence, around imposter syndrome, or imposter phenomenon, as we call it. And there's a lot of course corrections that people can take. And sometimes it just needs somebody old like me to say, do you know what, it'll be all right. These things happen, and here's my version of it, and this is what I did. And so I think sharing stories gives assurance to say that you're not the only people facing this, and actually it'll be okay, because this is what we've all done. So I think a lot of it, as a mentor, you know, I'd encourage anybody to be a mentor. So Rebecca, you know, you will support all sorts of people along the way, even at the earlier stages of someone's career. You don't have to be old and grey, or old and shiny, as I'm becoming, to be a mentor. It doesn't take the wisdom of Solomon. You know, it just takes people to connect and to support and engage and to be kind, because that's all this is about, really. Some of the mentoring program is just about being understanding and kind. There's various comments coming up on the chat. Do you want me to address those, or do you want me to pick that up separately?
Yeah, we can address them as we go, or we can address them at the end. It's completely up to you.
So I think the experience of being a mentor these days is, one of the things I've said to people who I've talked to recently is, don't be frightened to reach out. You know, LinkedIn's an amazing tool. So one of my mentors the other day was my mentees, who's really keen to get into a particular type of property work. You know, in our last session, we said, you must go and just reach out to people. And she's come back to say 5 people from the industry have said, yes, I would love to talk to you. Come and, you know, set up some work experience, or come and, you know, just come and chat. So this idea of just reaching out and tapping into the wisdom that's out there is really great. And I think the other thing is, have specifics that you'd like. My other top tip for mentees is, try and think of the specific things that you'd like to work on or deal with. So one of my mentees was going for he was an intern going for a permanent post within a property organization. And we talked about the specifics of how to deal with certain topics in interview, how to deal with certain concerns that he was expressing, certain confidence issues. You know, I'm sort of conflating 2 or 3 mentees here, but for the purpose of this, it's helpful. But I think having specifics that we could then think about, and that reflects back to what you just said, Rebecca, about, you know, going in with a plan and having a thought process, and making sure it's your session. So as a mentee, this is your session to explore and make the most of. It's not for the mentor to sit and just talk lyrically about, well, back in the old days we used to do X, Y, Z, because that's not relevant to you really. So be specific and be inquiring, I think, would be my top tips for mentees. There you go.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Chris. Might just pass on to that. So this is the timeline for the mentoring program itself. So obviously we're already in June now. That I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Animaker, but the last day is the 28th of June for applications. Then during August, you're told who you're matched with. So during the application process, you know, you'll get to choose. I think I saw a question in the chat about marketing. Yeah, you'll get to choose when you do your application. You know, you give us an idea of the type of industry you're interested in, and we take that into account when we do the matching on our end. But all that matching and everything occurs July and August, and then you're told in August who you are matched with. There'll then be in a kickoff session. So it's kind of similar to this, but it will be in person, so I can meet and greet, which is a great opportunity, not only to meet your mentor, but also meet other people undertaking the program. So that kicks off in September. And then from September to April, that's the period where you will, you know, meet, have like whatever timeline you choose with your mentor. And then it concludes around this time next year. So in terms of expectations, it's you know, it's somewhat imperative that you will make the initial touch base with your mentor. But as Rebecca says, it can be the other way. It can be however you want to run it. But we do ask that you come prepared. You know, you come with an idea in your mind of what you want to get out of it, and whether that is what you get out of it at the end. You know, it's up between you and your mentor, but we do ask that you do come prepared to speak and collaborate. Being open and honest, I think that's part of the mentoring process. And I guess the last one, be ready to have your thinking challenged. I know from my experience with my mentors, quite often have my thinking challenge. You know, I think I'm going to go a particular way, and it may not be the best course of action, but yeah, that's part of that mentoring process. Just we'll finish up with the feedback we've gotten from previous years. So the mutual relationship was one of the big forms of feedback we got, that it's not a one-way stream, it is a two-way stream between a mentor and a mentee. You know, even though it may be one party that's driving that relationship, it is supposed to be two ways, and we have tried to structure it this year that it is more of a two-way stream between the two parties. Training was the second one, so we will be holding mentorship trainings, and we'll be supporting you with that. And then secondly, we are going to sit here as the BPF to kind of assist with the mentoring program. Perhaps if there's, you know, a breakdown in communication or timelines and diaries aren't really aligning, we are going to be there to support you this year, rather than just let you guys go off by yourself. We will be here, and as it says on the laptop, when any other feedback that you guys have, I'm more than happy to support. Finally, here's a QR code. If you guys haven't got the link yet to join the BPF mentoring program for 2024, here is the link. It will take you through to the sign up. I guess any questions? I'm just looking at the chat box at the moment.
Can I make a quick point? That's right. You mentioned there about the sort of mutuality of the mentoring relationship. It can take time to establish. You know, I think sometimes we as mentors forget that coming into a mentoring relationship, especially if you're talking to somebody who's perceivedly more senior, as I guess by definition mentors will be, it can be a bit kind of daunting. And so there's a couple of times where with mentees, I've kind of, it's been sort of session 3 before we've got into the issues.
Mm.
And that's okay. So the reason I'm mentioning it is because I don't want mentees to come into it and think, well, you know, either on day 1 I've got to bare my soul and talk about my innermost fears. Actually, you know, it takes at least session 3 to get to that point. But actually, mentors also have to remember that there's a period of time to get into this. And most of the people I've mentored over the years, I still talk to now. I still, you know, I don't have as formal a relationship as perhaps we did during a formal mentoring program, but I still engage with, and, you know, delighted to hear that one of my mentees got the job they were asking for. One of my other mentees got a training contract in the place they were going for. You know, that's brilliant because we all invest that time, and back to your point, Rebecca, we really care about where where our mentees get to and how they progress. But you can't build that relationship in 2 half-hour sessions. You know, it's going to take time. So to mentees out there who are thinking, well, I don't know how that would start or how the program would start, you know, it will take time, but it is an investment that we as mentors are prepared to make. So, you know, sort of reflecting that back to mentees that, you know, we're all in this together, as it were, and we're all prepared to spend the time working with you.
100% agree, Chris. But any other questions from the audience, participants in the chat?
As we've got 10 minutes allocated to Q&A, I'm going to ask another question of you, Rebecca. When you went into your first sort of sessions, did you go in with a particular set of issues you wanted to talk about, or were you a bit kind of unsure about the direction of travel and that took time to tease out? Or
unsure of the direction of travel. I don't know at which point you joined the meeting, Chris, but I was saying
I was in and out because I kept joining as a participant.
Yeah, so I was saying initially I was unsure about whether or not to join a mentorship. So this is the first mentorship program I've actually joined. And previously I'd spent 12 years doing the role that I do now, but just not specialising within real estate. So I kind of thought, am I too senior? I didn't really have any desire at that moment in time to change the world or get a promotion or whatever it was. So I had to really think about why I would want to join a mentorship scheme. And I know that I wanted to understand how people that were prominent and successful in the industry, how they kind of got up to speed with the knowledge of it, how they built out their networks, what sort of events and places like that it should be at. It was more about picking somebody's brains. But in terms of a longer term goal for it, I didn't have one, and I still didn't. I wouldn't say I really had one. I just that core reason why just evolved throughout the relationship, and I completely echo what you say in terms of it takes time for it to tease out. So the first session that I had with Melanie, we just spoke about who I was and who she was, and I play volleyball and her nieces played volleyball in the States, so we spoke a bit about that, and then we kind of said what do we want to do going forward? Put some time in when you think it will be. And maybe on the second meeting, there were some frustrations that I kind of spoke about. But because there was nothing massively significant, in one hand, it probably was a lot easier to come out because it didn't really feel as though I was, opening up too much. But on the other hand, it was probably quite difficult because, quite often I kind of thought, well, I've not really got too much to say to you. But actually, like you said, so kind and just really created an environment where it was like I'm just going to come in and sit down and just tell you what I'm thinking.
There's a point you made there which I think is really useful for this session, which is the one about you don't have to come into a mentoring program waiting to be fixed.
Yeah.
This isn't about thinking let's identify some deep-rooted psychological trauma that we're going to try and unearth. We're not psychologists. We're just here to help you along. So I think maybe that's what one thing we'll say to potential mentees. Don't think you have to come into this looking for a problem. You can just come along and sort of tickle along parts of your career, or it is a sort of, can I bounce this off you? space, as much as it is actually I suffer deeply from imposter syndrome, or how on earth do I solve this? Because so it is as much or as little as you want it to be. And I think I'm 52 years old, and I have a mentor who I work with. I've been doing this for nearly 30 years. But I still work with a mentor. And it can be anything from how to deal with a particular staff issue, or how to deal with the heads of terms for £1 billion development scheme. We all work on these things. So I think just making that point, that it doesn't mean to say you're waiting to be fixed, I think is a really helpful point.
We just got some questions coming through now in the chat box. The first was from Alison. Thanks, Alison. Do you think it's more useful to have a mentor in your specialism or someone in a different area? Maybe Rebecca?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know if it would make a difference or not. I think the fundamentals are that they're there to support you, and they're there to be objective and to offer a perspective that ultimately allows you to kind of come to your own conclusions and your own solutions. If you needed something specific, or you had a specific, not a problem as such, but you wanted to resolve, then having somebody within that space is obviously going to be more useful. But if you're more generalized and you just want to, I don't know, let's take me, for example. If I said, okay, I just actually would quite like some way to navigate how being a woman in the workplace, how can I deal with some of the things that arise? I don't necessarily need somebody from a real estate background to teach me that, or to kind of support me through that. So I think it very much depends on what you want to achieve from it and what your purpose of asking for a mentor will be.
And my mentees have all been outside the legal profession. They've been planners and surveyors and so on. So I think having property as the sort of thread that holds us all together, because that gives us some understanding of the industry. But yeah, I agree. I don't think it makes any difference. A good mentor should be able to apply the skills across the board. And the other thing is, if you get a mentor who you don't like, it's okay to say so.
Awesome.
Obviously, I haven't had that experience.
Hopefully that answers your question, Alison. I think Daniel Brown's got a sort of similar question, whether we're looking to match mentees and mentors that are like in a similar profession or a similar job function, or is the aim of the mentoring scheme to access insights that are more broad across the industry. I guess to your point, Rebecca, it kind of depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think part of the application process, you can specify if you have certain needs that you kind of want to be met, and I guess that's taken into account when you kind of join people up and match people together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like I remember when I joined, I gave a particular sector that I was interested in, and it was matched almost to the T. So we definitely take that into account for when people apply. Anything else? Keep them coming through if you guys have any other questions. If not, Rebecca, Chris, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, no, I don't have anything at this time. But if anybody does have any questions, more than welcome for you to reach out on LinkedIn or contact details that will be shared. And always more happy to keep the conversation going if people want to.
Yeah, and similarly here, if people do get in touch through LinkedIn, that's probably the easiest way these days, isn't it? And I think I just for all the potential mentees on the call, there's almost nothing to lose by signing up. You try it, it works. If it works for you, or you think actually I don't really need any help, fine, have a couple of chats, and then you can roll back from it. But I have found that every mentee that I've worked with over the last 10 years of doing this kind of thing has benefited from, even if it's just the connectivity of a program like this. So I'd heartily encourage you all to do it. And thank you to Garrick. Garrick, thanks for hosting. It's been a really helpful session.
No worries. Thanks. My pleasure. Rebecca, Chris, thank you. To everyone online, as we said, the cutoff date is the 28th of June, and we'll be looking to give you an idea of who you've been matched with in August. So looking forward to it.